Roll call, please.
Director Chacon? Director Gedney?
Here.
Director Grajeda?
Here.
Director Hawkins?
Here.
Director Oscui?
Here.
Director Vasquez?
Present.
President Apalaca?
Here. Invocation, please. Director Hawkins, Pledge of Allegiance, Director Skew.
Please bow your heads. Our Heavenly Father, we want to thank you for allowing all of us to be here today at Central Basin. Please watch over Central Basin as she struggles through her finances and her deliveries of water. Please watch over the state of California as we struggle through this drought that we're going through. That seems to be a permanent one. And Lord, just watch those and have each and every one of us have a safe journey home. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Please face the flag, put your right on over your heart, and repeat after me. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Certification, do we have?
Was posted.
Okay. Public comments and presentations.
None, sir.
I'd like to also insert that if anyone's a candidate in the future, they can stand up and just present themselves. We'd love to know who you are.
Good morning.
Sure,
My name is
say
Alex
your-
Morales. I'll use my principal voice. Good morning. My name is Alex Morales, and
Good.
I'm running for Division 2. Thank you. Good morning.
Bob Tapia, running for Division 1.
Welcome, both of you. Presentations, do we have any?
Excuse me, the next item is walk-on items. There are no walk-on items. And I think the next is Metropolitan. I think.
All right, good morning. A couple of updates at Metropolitan Water District. First of all, they have an update on their assessed valuation for all of the member agencies in Metropolitan Water District. So Central Basin's vote entitlement percentage dropped this year from 5.08% to 5.01%. Each year in August, Metropolitan receives certified assessed valuation from 6 county auditors throughout the service area. And this information is used to update percentage participation and vote entitlement for each agency. Central Basin staff will continue our efforts in identifying potential options to address this issue in the coming year. Board chairmanship, the election process for the board chair is underway this month. Chairman Record's term expires this year. He will be sending an email to the board members this month, and the members will be asked to cast their votes for new chairmanship or new chairperson during the month of October. With respect to the LRP,
Tammy?
I'm sorry.
I'd like to interject on that note. Tammy mentioned that the chairmanship is up this October for the Metropolitan Water District Board. We all know that that's a very important position, and now that I've been on the board for quite some time now, I see that different agencies follow different procedures to determine who they're going to choose as the chairman or chairwoman of the board. And the City of LA, they actually interview the candidates and they make a decision as an entity on who they're going to support. San Diego does the same thing. I would like to bring that item for our board to have an opportunity to interview the candidates for the position and for this board to make a decision about who we're going to support as chairperson for the Metropolitan Water District. So the election is in October, right?
Yes.
So I'm thinking we can bring that on as an item for the next regular board meeting. Yeah. I'd like to request that item be brought before this board. Thank you.
Kevin, that's something that we definitely should
Many
consider.
agencies do it. We can do it. Trying to think of the time. You normally give them 10 to 15 minutes, so I believe there's 3 to 4 of them, so 45 minutes, that should be okay to do it. If not, we can have a special board meeting, but we'll schedule it. So
Anyone
the board
object to
meeting-
that? Is there any problem with that?
No, I'm fine.
Okay. Anybody object? Okay, fine. So we'll do that. Okay.
All right, great, thank you.
Good.
And then just another couple of quick updates on the LRP Metropolitan. They are continuing the discussions with the member agencies to consider adjusting the interim target up to 150,000 acre-feet a year. These discussions will continue, and they anticipate a consideration for action this fall. And lastly, with respect to the California Water Fix, recently, 2 new public joint powers authorities have been formed to aid in the implementation of the project, known as, the first one, Delta Conveyance Design and Construction Authority, and then the second one is the Delta Conveyance Finance Authority. And the board officers for the Finance Authority include Randy Record, who is the Metropolitan Chairman, as a board president for the Finance Authority. Santa Clara Valley Water District representative is the vice president, and then the San Gregorio Pass Water Agency general manager is a secretary. And then they have also hired Brian Thomas as the interim executive director. So they have been meeting since July 19th and have already begun several items for business. So more to come on the California Water Fix as well. That concludes my...
Excuse me, have candidates declared themselves
The candidates,
for MWD?
they've already been selected. Yeah,
Oh,
they've already
so who are
been
they?
decided upon. Oh, I'm sorry, for Metropolitan Water District, board president is Randy Record, is the board officer for the Delta Conveyance Finance Authority. And then on the Construction Authority, there's also a representative for Metropolitan. And I'm sorry, I don't have that chart in front of me. I
Steve
should have brought it with
Blois?
me, but yes, Steve
Steve Blois is
thank you.
representing us
Yeah.
from Orange
And then
County.
the alternate is Shane Chapman, in place of Steve Blois. And thank you.
Is that it?
Okay.
Anything else?
Yep, that's all.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Consent calendar. Does anyone have any concerns with pulling any of the items on the consent calendar? If not, do I have a motion to?
Mr. Chair, I have a question on items 7 and 8.
Okay. So we'll pull 7 and 8 for you. Other than that, do I have a motion to approve?
I also have a question about item number 6, which is the demands for the legal fees.
Item for what?
The financial report, specifically the warrant run for the legal fees.
Where is that under?
It's under the
6A.
6A.
Okay. And other than that, do I have a motion that you approve?
Move to approve.
Second.
I'll second.
Roll call.
Just for clarification, this is approving the consent calendar minus items 7, 8, and 6A? Yes? Okay.
6, 7, and 8.
Okay.
Yeah, just 6A though,
6A?
Yeah.
Okay.
unless anyone has.
Okay. Director Chacon?
Yes.
Director Gedney?
Yes.
Director Grajeda?
Yes.
Director Hawkins?
Yes.
Director Oscui?
Yes.
Director Vasquez?
Yes?
President Apodaca?
Yes. Okay, we're gonna go to 6.
6-8, yeah. I have just 2 comments regarding the warrant run. I had an opportunity to review some of the legal bills that are before us, and I wanted to make a request that the lawyers provide a briefing on the work that they're doing. Maybe we can schedule a meeting so that we're informed, because I see that there's a lot of legal work that's being done, but I don't really know the details of it. So I'm certainly interested in setting up a meeting to be better informed about the work that's being done. The other comment is that there was I believe about a $7,000 bill that was pending, and it was a bill from Michael Zwayback, who I understand is...
So that's not a bill.
Oh, it's not a bill?
No, that's transferring the contract.
Okay, I saw a $7,000.
Yeah, that's the remaining amount on his contract he left and started his own from. That's the transfer of the contract, man, that's not a bill.
Okay, so I just wanted to make the comment though and make the board aware that the lawyer that is representing the Central Basin on the Ketam case is very much available to come and give the Central Basin Board of Directors a briefing on the status of the matter if that's something that the agency is interested in doing, so that we're not having to pay additional funds to an attorney that is really not doing anything on the case but reading the court files. We recently had a hearing. We've had several hearings. I've never seen any of the lawyers that have been submitting invoices to the Central Basin at any of the hearings. So I just wanted to offer that so that we're not incurring additional legal fees. Thank you.
Item 7.
Item 7, there's a staff report talking about the legal expenses. Legal services have expended 118% of the annual budget. Services are inclusive of the district legal counsel and special counsel. The increased spending is attributed to the Assembly Bill 1794 review and related reimbursements filing and pending litigation in connection with Assembly Bill 1794. So you're saying that well, I don't know who wrote the staff report. Is that you, John? Andrew?
Yes.
So you're saying that we're over budget on legal because of Assembly Bill 1794? Is that how I read this?
There is some of the overage that is due to that.
And how much is it? Because I'm aware of a great many things that went over because of contracts and various other things. And I see the staff and read it as Assembly Bill 1794 is the reason?
No,
I need more specificity than that.
Yeah, we can get back to you on that.
Well, then I think this needs to be redone.
Yeah. Again, I think Director Gray has a point on this, to single those two items out while they weren't budgeted. The two items that we have on there are to get reimbursement per AB 1794, which really it's a good thing. I mean, we're trying to get reimbursed, and there's an issue there.
Has that been submitted?
Yes, it has.
And where does it stand?
It was rejected, resubmitted, and now they're waiting on a court case to be settled that is on a similar point, and they'll get back to us. And it's for about $220.
Something like this should be a full-blown report to the board about Assembly Bill 1794 because of the importance of it, and not just some comment in a staff report that's saying this is why legal bills are over because of Assembly Bill 1794.
I do have a question also regarding that. Kevin, you mentioned that there was a lawsuit that was filed regarding legal fees. Is that by another public entity against the state, or would you
This is on a reimbursement part of it.
Right.
Where we're trying to get reimbursed by the state. And do you remember what it was, San Luis Obispo?
Yeah, there's a case that's basically a split among the authorities. So the appellate court is trying to resolve the issue as to whether there are state mandates, if an agency can get reimbursed for those, if it doesn't collect property taxes, and that's the case.
Yeah.
So they're waiting to have that issue resolved before they make a determination on our request to the state.
Because that's the reason for rejecting it. They didn't consider our parcel tax as a property tax.
You know, one of the things that I'm still a little confused about with respect to this matter is whether the Attorney General has jurisdiction over that, and if so, why are they not the ones that are defending the case? I mean, this case, my understanding of this case is that it's a challenge to the Assembly bill that was proposed and passed by the California legislature that changed the composition of our board, and that the issue was around that, right?
I believe you're talking about the separate issue. This is the Huntington Park lawsuit. This is simply about our request for reimbursement for a state mandated cost. The Huntington Park, you're correct, but the Attorney General declined to defend it.
Okay, so so these legal bills that we're discussing are legal bills that have been incurred as a result of what case? Is it, because there were two
Yeah.
separate lawsuits that were filed, right?
No, we're talking about two separate things. One is the reimbursement for the money we spent building out the dais and stuff like that, which is normally a given thing for a state mandated reimbursement. Okay, so
So how
we
much-
applied for that, and they said it was rejected because we don't get a direct property tax.
Okay.
So that is the item that is now being settled by a court on a similar case. That's one issue. The second issue is the city of Huntington Park about the selection process for the city voted attorney and our rejection of their candidate at the time. And that is still going through the court process.
Okay, so just for clarification, this reimbursement that we're calling a reimbursement of legal fees is for,
Yeah, it's not just legal fees.
oh, okay.
It's the cost to build up the dais, the cost of all the cost of implementing AB 1290.
So do we have a breakdown of that?
Yes, we had a detailed report that was given to the board when it was sent in, but I'll get it for you, ma'am.
Yeah, I mean, it would be good to have that again.
Yeah.
To get a refresher. So it's $273? I mean,
We're talking about-
$270,000?
It's 200, I don't remember the exact number, but it's 230,000 roughly.
Does anyone know?
215,000.
How much?
215,000.
215,000.
Okay, and of that 215,000, does anyone have any idea what the breakdown of
Yeah,
what that?
But again, we don't have an agenda item to discuss this in detail, ma'am, so, but we have all the information. I'd be glad to give it a,
Oh, okay, I just thought that that's what this agenda item was about. No, what is this? Okay.
Item 8.
Item 8 is a comment. So I see that imported water sales are dropping. We raised rates substantially this year. What kind of report is being developed to track sales so we can stay ahead of this thing, well ahead of it in terms of where sales are going, how they're tracking in relationship to the new rates, and try to probably look out 3 to 5 years rather than wait until last minute and make decisions at the last minute. How are you folks tracking imported water sales?
So for purposes of this report, we look at it on a monthly basis. We do track it. Last month at the Water Resources Committee, we brought back more information as far as like our top 5 users in the private water utilities and what has impacted the use of imported water, how local supplies have become more available. In terms of providing more reporting, we're looking to bring this back in September as far as the historical, what has happened with the water demand all throughout the basin, and then looking ahead 5 years based on what we've seen in our history, what we look to do in the next 5 years. So we'll be bringing back, and we're not the only agency that's being impacted. All agencies, including Metropolitan, are impacted by imported water use and its decline. So we'll take a look at that as well. So we'll bring it back to the committee and...
Tammy, why wouldn't MWD like the fact that it's declining? I mean, that allows them more water to provide to those areas that don't have any groundwater, like out in Eastern Municipal Water District and San Diego and some of
It
these
does allow them to keep more water in storage, that's correct. Yeah. So
I'm sorry?
It allows them to keep more water into
Right,
storage.
right.
Yeah.
so
I mean, they're switching to recycled water. They want more recycled water projects to get off of imported water. So why wouldn't they like declines?
They do, I mean, they recognize it, they like the decline because you're meeting the state mandates, you're meeting certain things like the 20 by 2020 that just around the corner. We're expected, we anticipate not having so much supply in the future. The storage levels are very healthy right now. There's a lot of variables that are happening with respect to imported water, both on the Colorado River water, on the State Water Project.
So when you look at these charts, is part of your development to talk to these agencies and ask them, what, you probably already know the answer, but what are you folks looking at? Are they bringing on more groundwater and planning to get off of imported water so that we have better records to say, hey, some of these guys are going to curtail going forward another 10, 15. So you guys are doing that.
That's correct, yeah. And Kevin is helping us track that as well and talking to our agencies and
So that'll
finding
be in
out.
your report. that you've talked to these agencies and they're looking at developing more groundwater.
We just finished the 5-year survey for Metropolitan, which is projections of Metropolitan. We do that by retail agency. Have we got everybody's response?
We have not. We have gotten most of everybody's response. We're waiting for one of our larger utilities, but we are making an average assumption and asking them, this is what we're assuming, can you verify that?
And we put this together, but then we use judgment, particularly Kevin Watt, who knows this basin, and we usually downplay it because a lot of people overestimate that demand. So we try and knock it. So we projected out, we have a 5-year projection where we expect to be in 5 years.
Okay.
All right, and again, we'll bring that back next month to give you a little
We
bit
also
more
have to do
information.
that for the bond refinancing. You have to give them an accurate projection of where you're going. Again, we'll be to bring that back next month also.
Okay, that was all my questions. With that, Mr. President,
I have one question, just very quickly. On the second page of the report, on page 28 of the overall package, we have a figure 2, which are June Big 5 reported water sales. In the report we're discussing, are you going to be able to take information from this graph and identify how that falls within the parameters of the budget going forward? In other words, what are the sales you need to meet budget? What happens if those sales are below budget? I'd like to see that in the report.
Okay.
Because the effects of what this board did relative to increasing rates are still being felt, and it's something we need to discuss at every meeting. So I'd like to see that clearly identified in the report as well. That's all I have.
Okay, great.
Do I have a second to Director Grajeda's motion to approve? Roll call, please.
This is to approve the 3 items.
3 items.
Okay. Director Chacon?
Yes.
Director Gedney?
Yes.
Director Grajeda?
Yes.
Director Hawkins?
Yes.
Director Oscui?
Yes.
Director Vasquez?
No?
President Apodaca?
Yes. Item 9, Metropolitan Water District Program updates.
Tammy? Oh, it's Sandy.
Good morning, directors. This item is the partnership with Liberty, item 12. So last month, I came to the board and provided an update on the conservation programs at Central Basin and our allocation and all the exciting rebates that are going to be available to our residents and our commercial customers. And so today, I brought to you here a potential partnership with Liberty Utilities. They have submitted forms to participate in our supplemental as well as our local partnership project budget. They have the Toilet Direct program and the California Alternative Rates Water Toilet Direct Install program. Both of these, the customer would receive a toilet for free, and Liberty would receive the $40 rebate for that toilet that's being installed. They have requested a total of $30,000 towards those toilet rebates. In addition, as I mentioned, they have also asked for supplemental funding for their projects of $35,000. That would be for 400 toilets for residential and 600 toilets for commercial. We have partnered with Liberty Utilities for, I think, probably now almost 10 years. So it's been a great partnership for Central Basin as well as for Liberty customers. It does provide them, as I mentioned, these devices at a lower cost. Their customers are able to access these through the Be Waterwise website. Are there any questions?
Yes.
Yes.
When will this take effect?
So this will be effective on July 1st. It is retroactive, so it is the fiscal year, July 1st, 2018 through June 30th, 2019. And if there are no further questions, I can read the motion.
Sandy, before
Yes.
you make you read the motion.
Yes.
I want to make a comment. I know that we have a lot of our purveyors that attend our board meetings, and I really want to encourage our purveyors to join in partnering with the Metropolitan Water District to help us with these installation programs to help, in turn, folks conserve water in the region. The Metropolitan Water District allocates What is it? What's the amount, Sandy?
We have over 700,000 for the next 2 fiscal years.
For the next 2 fiscal years, we have an allocation of over $700,000. And I think this is really a great opportunity for us to partner with all of our purveyors, the private water companies, the mutuals, the cities, to create, to bring these programs to our local cities. Unfortunately, because we don't have a lot of participation from our purveyors, we don't spend all of the money that's allocated. And so it's a big loss for Central Basin and our service area because we're still paying into the pot of money that the Metropolitan Water District basically allocates and sets aside for all of its member agencies. So I'm really interested in doing a little more outreach, maybe having a special workshop on how we can create a partnership with our purveyors so that we can make sure that we maximize the use of this funding for our district. Thank you.
Thank you.
Director Hawkins, do you have any comments about that?
No comments.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, and the one additional comment is that the participation in this program, it requires for the purveyor to put a certain amount of money into the pot.
Yes.
Which is the big challenge for us, is getting the purveyors to buy in. I know the city of Southgate has done a really great job of being a partner in the past. I don't know of any other city that has actually spent money on devices. Do we have any other cities?
During my term, it's only been the city of Southgate.
Yeah. And Southgate is really an example, in my opinion, of a city that really values our water supply. You know, they have weaned themselves off of imported water. I think it's been maybe, 7 or 8 years that they have not purchased imported water. They purchase recycled water from us. And I think for many communities, many local communities, that has been the goal. And a part of them being able to achieve that is by investing in these local conservation programs. So
Thank you, Director.
we invite you to participate.
Thank you. The recommended motion that the board authorizes the general manager to enter into a water efficiency partnership agreement with Liberty Utilities beginning July 1st, 2018 through June 30th, 2019 for 1, the Toilet Direct and Care Toilet Direct install programs in the amount not to exceed $30,000 and supplemental funding in the amount not to exceed $35,000.
Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion, Mr. President.
Have a second?
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Director Chaconne?
Yes.
Director Gedney?
Yes.
Director Grajeda?
Yes.
Director Hawkins?
Yes.
Director Osculi? Director Vasquez?
Yes.
President Apodaca?
Yes.
Thank you.
Item 13, or is it 12? I'm sorry. 13? Discussion and approval of water quality protection plan, transfer agreement with the city of Whittier.
Yes, good morning, directors. As you're already aware, the WQPP project consists of 2 wells, granular activated carbon vessels for treatment, piping, and the associated equipment. The WQPP has been operating since 2007 under a Memorandum of Understanding, or MOU, and this is between Central Basin, Pico Rivera, Santa Fe Springs, and the city of Whittier. There are a handful of agreements between the district and Whittier, and this would be for land use and also for operations. And the MOU and related agreements between the district and the city were either modified and extended or allowed to expire in December of 2017. And this was done to facilitate a transition of the WQPP over to the city of Whittier. Involved agencies have been working on this over the last several months, most notably the State Water Resources Control Board, Department of Drinking Water, or DDW. And they're the ones that are going to approve any changes to the existing program and the use of the infrastructure. And per DDW, the main steps to complete a full transition are to amend or terminate existing contract agreements between the district and the cities. This is completed with the exception of the agreement addressed under this item before you today. Development of a contingency plan for the removal of the treatment plant, and this has already been completed by Whittier and approved by DDW. And to mention today that the contingency plan is very involved and does require a lot of additional work to manage it. The next item is to establish a new agreement between the district and Whittier to transition ownership of the property and equipment to the city of Whittier. And this item is yet to be completed and is being addressed by this item today and the agreement attached as Exhibit A. Whittier is to submit an application to DDW, and this is to initiate the amendment of the district's existing permit to supply water. This hasn't been completed yet, but will be prior to December of this year. And lastly, the district will submit an affidavit form to DDW, and this is to finalize the amendment of our existing permit. And this will essentially de-permit us as the owner and water supplier for the WQPP. And so if you're looking at the list of items to do in your memo, we are attempting to complete item number 3 on that list. Whittier and the district, and this includes district legal counsel, drafted an agreement attached, as I mentioned previously, as Exhibit A to transition the ownership of the property and the equipment. And please note the city of Whittier, their city council has already approved the attached language in substantial conformance, and this took place on July 17th. And the agreement was provided to the Bureau of Reclamation for their review as well, and this is because they funded the WQPP project, and they have been well informed of the transition, and they approve of the transition and the agreement language that's attached. And as an update for the transition process, and this would be for costs on Central Basin side, legal costs to date are $5,170, and staff costs to date are $5,890, and each of these will be reimbursed up to $10,000. Any costs beyond that will be negotiated by the district and the city of Whittier. And so that concludes the update. Are there any questions that I can address?
Jackie, since Whittier's here, would they like to make any comments now about anything?
I am Dave Schickling with the City of Whittier. Jackie, a very complete report there. The importance of this treatment plant to stay in place, DDW made that clear that this is protecting the Central Basin while the Whittier Narrows Operable Unit is not pumping at a capacity to meet the record of decision as prescribed by the EPA. So this plant being there and the contingency plan that Jackie spoke about is very important, that we're ready to bring those carbon filters back online if we test above 80% of the MCL, the maximum contamination level. So, there's a lot of things that we have to do at the City of Whittier, but we feel this is an important project for the Central Basin to protect our wells and everybody else's. So, thank you.
Thank you. Director Hawkins, since you've been here the longest next to me, do you have any comments?
Yeah, I'm a little confused on some of this because I thought a few years ago we were going to transfer it, and they said because we had taken federal money, we couldn't transfer it. And now it seems like we're transferring it. What changed in all this?
We can, I don't know what the attorney speak, but I believe the answer is we can transfer it, we just can't transfer it at a profit. We can't sell it at market value or something like that. We can't profit off of the federal money. We can transfer the ownership and operation to do the originally intended purposes. But that's it.
That's correct.
That's correct.
So we own it.
I'm not sure the question whether you call it ownership or not. The federal government put the money in.
Who runs and operates it?
We do right now.
Okay.
As a trustee for the other agencies.
And we're going to give that trusteeship to the city of
Whittier.
Okay.
Let me add that it was and has been a very successful program since I've been here, and that's close to 20 years, that people, or I should say cities like Pico Rivera and surrounding cities who were buying water when it was treated by the city of Whittier, and the city of Whittier did a very good job. That it was a need at the time, and there was the contamination was much higher at that time. So I just want to add that.
Are there any more questions before the
Question,
recommended motion?
Jackie, just ask it again, and I apologize, it's the water quality geek in me, so I'll plead guilty to that. What are the contamination levels in that area right now? I mean, what would we be treating for right now?
The main ones right now are TCE and PCE, and there was a study that was recently done a few years back, and they said that essentially we haven't seen any spikes in a very long time, and so we're cleaning clean water at this time.
What are those levels at, if just generally? I mean, are there...
I don't know offhand, but maybe the city may know offhand what levels.
So they're below MCL.
Okay. So, Dave, thank you, we'll bring you back.
Yeah, no
What are the
problem.
levels at generally?
It's the levels from CB1 and CB2. Those are the two wells that are in Pico Rivera that are related to this plant. They're non-detect, or a couple of years ago, maybe they got to like 1.5 TCE. The Whittier Narrows hits are, in our, upstream and then to the north of the dam, northeast of the dam, where the main basin is, which is, just right across where the water flows. Those levels are pretty high. We have two wells that are, one's about 17 parts per billion, which is, MCL is 5, so that well is pretty much out of service. And we have another that's around 8. So those levels are going up. So that in the Whittier Narrows area, you'll see levels, depending on your depth, as high as 40. So those are the upstream levels that could be migrating down to this area through the Central Basin. But as currently, CB1 and CB2 have non-detect.
So, when was the last time we operated those carbon vessels?
They're currently operating right now.
Oh, they are.
Water is
So
pumping through. Water has been pumping through those vessels, since day one. Almost 20 years ago when the plant started up.
Okay.
So
how frequently do we change out the carbon?
we have never changed out the carbon. That's an expense that the city will have to face.
Okay.
That's part of the contingency plan. Those vessels are in place and ready to go. Contingency plan allows us to take them offline, clean them out, get them all ready, charge them up, and then if the contamination level is brought up to 80% of the MCL, then they come back online and stay online.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
What is the current cost to Central Basin for the maintenance and everything that is required to run this facility? What is the current annual cost?
As of January 1st, 2018, it's approximately $135,000 per year.
$135,000 per year. Okay. And Central Basin pays for that from its general fund, or do we have federal funding that covers that cost, or how is this paid for?
We don't have federal funding at this time, and Andrew may be able to more eloquently say this, but I believe we have a separate account that we manage WQPP costs in and out of.
Aren't all our costs recovered?
They are, yes, but we do issue an invoice to the city of Whittier on a quarterly basis to recoup those costs.
Okay. So the city, how much is that? How much does the city, of the 135 annual cost?
They would reimburse all of that, but we have sent out 2 invoices so far. So the first invoice for the first quarter was in the amount of $37,208.81. And then the second quarterly invoice that went out was for the amount of $53,353.41.
How long has Central Basin been overseeing this facility?
Since it started up in the early 2000s.
In 2000?
2003-ish.
Yeah, 2003.
Right.
2003. And who paid for the construction of the project?
The Bureau of Reclamation.
And Central Basin was charged with the responsibility of maintaining it?
Right, we took that on. Correct.
Is there a reason why Central Basin, I know you weren't here in 2003, but what's the history behind this? I'm interested in knowing a little more about the history of how this project
Director
fell
Hawkins, you want to give her the
on the lap
information
of
she wants?
Central Basin.
This was something we found, a little bit of history. We found that we had some MTBE back then, supposedly coming from a plant way up north, and then it was contaminating our water. We went to Grace Napolitano, Congresswoman at that time, and she appropriated $10 million to get the project started. And then we got $1 million roughly per year for about the next 6, 7, 8 years. And then, as far as I know, we started cleaning up a lot of that, and then somewhere in that time period, who was it put the wells above us? There's 2 or 3 wells just above us, because we're actually the pickup wells for the other wells.
That would be the Whittier Narrows, if
Yeah, is that the same one?
the Whittier Narrows. I'm not sure of what wells you're talking about, aside from the Whittier Narrows plant that's north.
Okay, because I thought environmental, somebody put the wells just above
The
us.
EPA has put in monitoring wells.
Yes, and then they put some wells in there as well, and it helped our wells because we weren't able to keep up at that time. And since then, it's gone. We haven't had to do the production that we had to in the very beginning, but we still operated it because there was different things that have shown up since then.
And the recommendation to transfer this, the operation of this facility to the city of Whittier is a recommendation that Kevin is making? Is that how this came about, or?
We took this to the board as an information item in November.
Okay.
We took it to the board as an action item in December, discussed it in detail, and the board approved the process. Now we're just completing the process that the board included. The only benefit to us in terms of this thing is it frees up staff time. And we get out from some liabilities, so it may help us that way.
What liabilities are those?
For the operation of a facility like this, there's always liabilities in
And we're also losing an asset, right? Because is this an asset? There's nothing about, this is not an asset in our books?
No, because, but.
It is.
Saying it is an asset?
Yeah. Yeah. My only concern is that in the past year, we have been shifting what we do here, and I want to make sure that we have a very open discussion about what we're doing here. I know that last year sometime we also gave up our water master to the Water Replenishment District for the sake of the $70,000 savings, and that was a recommendation that was made by the general manager.
Yes.
And so now this is coming before this board. My understanding is this is your recommendation, unless I'm not clear.
My recommendation in the statement, what we're doing is
Yeah.
following out the board's orders. This is something that we don't care one way or the other, then it frees up staff time.
Yeah.
The actions that we've been taking in the last year have been streamlined, reduce the staff, reduce what we're doing, the actions that we can do, and free up to continue to operate effectively. So we're trying to get more efficient. In this case here, the city of Whittier requested it. We took it to the board in November for information. We took it in December for action. The board voted on it. Now we're just carrying out the board's wishes.
Okay, so I just wanted to just get a little bit of background.
No, that's exactly.
So the director here is in support of this, the director that represents the area?
They've been asking this for quite a few years.
Okay. Okay.
Mr. Chair, I have some questions. This isn't our asset because we don't own it, we didn't pay for it, so it can't be in the books as our asset, is it?
That's the finance guy.
Is it in our books as an asset or not?
Speak up.
Yes, it is an asset of the district.
Then we have ownership of it.
We do.
Then it's up to us to sell it or not sell it.
However, I think, as was previously mentioned, we cannot profit from the sale.
Right. So what's the...
I still have the floor, Director.
Transfer.
Oh, excuse me.
So it's in our books as an asset. We reflect that, and what's that asset? What's the cost of that? What's the value of that asset?
It's $6.6 million.
It's in our books as an asset, so we have that $6 million additional value that we have right now. and we're just going to give that away. Is that correct?
Yeah. We're transferring the ownership.
We're just going to give it away. That's how I see it. This plant, and I understand, and the contract for the MOU expired in December. Now, the contract for the MOU expired in December, which means all parties can just walk away and do nothing with this plant. Is that correct?
Actually, no, we extended things for the next year.
If Whittier did not want to run this plant, would it just be mothballed?
I don't know.
Don't have an answer?
No, I don't know the answer to that.
It's my understanding that the work that we did in December was to allow for the plant to continue to operate under the guise of Whittier, but it wasn't. I don't recall the action I took was to provide them, give them over the plant without further discussion about the value of the plant. And so when I look at the December item, it was for Whittier to take over the running of the plant, not the ownership of the plant. That's what we're doing today.
And as I pointed out, in both the November and December staff letters, the initiation of this process was Whittier desires to take over ownership.
I understand there is a value of this asset, a $6 million value to the district. We lease property from the city of Whittier. Has that ever been discussed about how about some value back? The purveyors have paid for this. The users of the plant have been paying for this. All four parties have been paying for this, and that's two wells that are operating. The quality of the water, the GACs, all that's of value. I can't vote on this today because I don't feel that this has been negotiated in the best interest of this district.
Director, maybe this may provide a little bit more clarity on the situation. We have spoken with the Bureau of Reclamation on several occasions, and we being Central Basin staff and the city of Whittier, and it is our understanding that we are not to make profit on it, and any profit that's made from it, we would...
Is the city of Whittier making profit off this?
I believe that you guys are going to be using it for the same benefit.
Are they?
Right.
What are they doing with the water? Putting it in the creek, or are they putting it in their system and selling it? I guess I don't understand the definition of profit. And David, I apologize.
Yeah, I can only speak.
This is a value to the city of Whittier.
I can only speak to what we're doing with the water right now, and that's City of Santa Fe Springs, as you know, has pretty much lost all their groundwater wells because of contamination. They depend on this plant to pressurize their, the one half of their city, and also receive water from it. That's their source besides the MWD connection. And so we charge them and cover our costs and pump water to them right now. And so that's currently what it's doing right now. And with the contamination that's being faced, like I said, from Whittier Narrows operable unit, we're told now won't be operating under the capacity of the record of decision from the EPA until May of 2021. So contamination will move into the Central Basin at that point. So this plant needs to be ready to go, and kind of that is DW Drinking Water State Drinking Water Board said this plant cannot be abandoned. It has to keep going because of this Whittier Narrows problem. We were there again faced with some of the contamination that we have. Our Central Basin well is good so far, so it needs to be there.
This plant is protecting your wells and your water also.
It's actually downstream from our wells. So it
doesn't protect you at all.
It's downstream. Everything that we have flows down into it. So if once those wells, as they are being hit, then its next path is into the Central Basin. And I don't know what the next production well is there, but it's valuable to have there. Central Basin does have the obligation to, if everyone walked away from the plant, to remove everything from our facility, pipelines, everything.
At our cost?
At your cost. At your cost.
Split amongst everybody?
You know, the agreement is at your cost to remove the facility. So there is a substantial savings, if you look at it that way, if you were to have to remove that plant.
And abandon the wells?
And abandon the wells. So.
Mr. Chairman, I have some questions.
Yes.
Now, Central Basin finances are in a very fragile situation right now, and my concern with this issue is how this asset, which is listed in our finance portfolio as an asset, how this is going to impact our bond rating, if it can impact our bond rating, and any other issue that this could create.
So thank you for the question. This is going to be a non-cash item if we successfully transfer it to the city of Whittier. So that will not have an impact in the DCR calculation because it's a loss, a non-cash loss on disposal of, or transfer rather, of those assets. However, if somehow the plant were to be decommissioned and cash expenses were made toward the removal of the well, removal of the facilities, those would have an impact on our DCR, as those expenses would be cash expenses.
Right. Well, my understanding is that when these financial institutions come in and analyze our assets, our bank accounts, that this $6 million actually helps us have a solid financial footing so that our bond agencies, the folks that are giving us credit, feel that we have enough assets in the books to loan us money or to refinance our bonds. So I understand that we're not going to write any checks because the city is obviously reimbursing us for most of the costs for that. I really see this as an opportunity to partner with the city, to be a partner with the city, to study the option of doing well remediation for our local communities. It's something that our neighboring water agency does. And, I think we should see this as an opportunity to be a better partner with our purveyor community. Yeah, thank you.
Are there any more questions before the motion?
If I may. Director Grajeda brought up some good points. There is a reference in the report to a financial analysis that is being prepared. What's the status of that analysis, and when is it going to be ready?
Again, Finance Director.
So that analysis, I've thought long and hard because it's a complex one that it has to go back numerous years, pretty much to the inception of the project. So we've been concentrating on a lot of things like the audit, the refinance.
Sure.
However, that is slated for completion hopefully in the next couple weeks now that the field work is done, so we can give the board an update on that.
Andrew, you feel that that report perhaps may shed some light on some of the questions and provide some answers to some of the questions that was answered today? That was questioned today?
Yes.
Okay, fair enough. Would that be something that we may consider to receive that and then take action after, perhaps?
As opposed to table it until the next board meeting?
Right. Is that?
I would second that.
That would be a substitute motion that I have to put. But Would that, Whittier perhaps can answer this, would there be an impact on the timeline that has been negotiated with staff and Whittier? Is it going to jeopardize anything? Is it going to have any negative consequences?
It would be, you're continuing it to your next board meeting as you're proposing. We could continue to operate the plant as it is now. There are some, obligations. The contingency plan is with the state. They're waiting to hear a result of this, and we were told we were going to get back to them. I don't think there's anything that can't wait. It was, we'd like to happen as soon as possible, obviously. But I suppose we could delay a month without anything that I can think of right now. So.
Well, I appreciate that. There were some questions that were asked, and it deserves answers. And I think the financial report analysis is going to provide those answers, so that the board then can make a collective decision on this issue with enough information. The only caveat, and I think the only danger, is that you're going to go back to your council, and after they've taken a vote, they're going to be irritated how come this thing is not being resolved. But I don't think that by delaying it one meeting, we will jeopardize anything. So I just wanted to make sure about that.
Yeah, and just if I may speak at the value a little bit there, I neglected to say, these two wells, how they're plumbed in, they're plumbed through our plant, so they're of no value to anyone else. I know at one point the city of Pico Rivera was interested in one of them, but there's no waste discharge anywhere in that area. It has to come through our plant and back through the river. So the value of them of the whole plant and everything itself is very little. So that was discussed earlier. So just if I may add that.
The thing that I'm mostly interested in, and it was asked again, thank you for your answers, was the question of ownership and not being able, which is true, the guidelines specify that, to make any profit. However, I was wondering what was the initial capital investment, if there was any, by the district to gain that ownership. I think
it was all paid through grants.
So if it was paid through grants, then the city didn't pay anything, right?
Grants.
All Bureau grants.
Right, so then how could you then argue the issue of ownership and giving it away when there was no investment put in by the district in the first place? But those are all the questions that I think the analysis is going to address.
Director, if I might, we should get clarity. I don't want you to have over expectations of what this report is. So if you could explain the outline of the report.
If I want to put pressure on Andrew, that's fine.
So I'll be brief in my comments. So the way that it's been explained to me is that the district received grant funds from the Bureau. Portion of those monies, I think that Director Hawkins mentioned, went toward operations. So we set up a liability on our books that was money that we received for operations. And so that liability has been slowly whittling down year by year. And so as the expenses are incurred by the district, and then there's a partial reimbursement, each year it has been cost neutral.
That's actually a pot of cash, wasn't it?
It was a pot of cash
that put it in language that us poor guys can understand.
Right. The money went into the district's account on the double entry accounting system, increase in cash, but we had to put that somewhere else on the other side of things, and we put the other side as a liability. So that's true. The cash came in, we had to record that as a liability. So each year there's a small funding, even though it's a break even on our profit and loss, and it has been break even, we're kind of whittling away at that cash balance as we go. Now, as it relates to the asset, that $6.6 million, each year we have to record depreciation. It's about $150,000 a year. We're about a third of the way through the useful life, the estimated useful life of that. So we're in essence recording a non-cash item each year of depreciation, about $150,000. We're at about $2.2 million, assuming about a third of the way through. So some of those depreciation expenses show up every year, but again, that's not a part of the DCR. Depreciation is not as part of the calculation. So what you're going to see in this report is, over time, whatever the amount is that we initially received, it's going to be whittled down. Again, on the P&L, it's a break even, so I want to make sure but that initial cash has been funding, in essence, the slight annual deficiency each year until this last year.
And perhaps you can answer this for Jackie, the $135,000 a year invoice that we sent, and we received that money back. You just mentioned the first quarter, the second quarter, the first quarter was 37, the second quarter 52 something change. So the lease payment, is that included in there, or do we pay for that separately from this?
We actually, from the agreement modifications that we made in December of 2017, the agreement was that they would no longer charge us for the lease payments for the WQPP property as long as that they could sell the water in lieu of us selling the water.
So that was in anticipation of this thing?
Correct. That was a step one.
But prior to that, we billed them?
Prior to that, they would bill us for the lease, and we would pay them, and then we would offset those costs with water sales.
Got it. So it was a net zero then for us?
Correct.
Zero cost. Okay, sorry. With that, I would have a motion, please recommend a motion to table this item. That's a substitute motion. So once we receive the comprehensive analysis by Andrew, then we can come back.
I'll second that on the condition that Whittier is okay with that we table it.
I can't speak for the city council,
Is that okay? Because I won't vote for it unless you guys say yes. Okay. Roll call, please.
Director Chacon?
Well, my thing is, I was not in favor of it from the beginning, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to abstain on this thing.
Director Gedney?
Just a comment, we had some discussion today on the viability of this plant, the use of this plant, and the possible abandonment of this plant. And since the district is the owner of the permit at this time, I think it'd be good to clarify, we have no intention of walking away from this plant, given what we heard Division of Drinking Water's comments were. I vote yes.
Director Grajeda?
Yes.
Director Hawkins?
Now, the motion is to put it over to the next board meeting.
Table it to September.
I vote yes then.
Director Osculi?
Yes.
Director Vasquez?
Yes?
President Apodaca?
Yes.
Thank you.
Item 14, discussion and approval of amendment number 1 to agreement 2015 and 26 between the City of Montebello and the District for financing and supplying recycled water to the Montebello Golf Course.
Start off on this. As you recall, or some of the board members will, in 2014, the district had discussions with the City of Montebello about providing recycled water to the golf course. They did a preliminary study in January 2015, signed an agreement to lend them $615,000 on terms that would pay it back by a surcharge of $250 an acre foot on the water sold, which is expected to be about 250 acre feet a year, and pay it with the start when they were completed. Fast forward, they had some problems with the design, et cetera. They finally got the project done, but it was basically 3 years later when it's coming to conclusion. And inflation in that time in terms of the construction of recycled water facilities increased the cost. The total project cost when it's completed now would be $855,000. They asked us to increase the loan amount on the initial agreement from $615 to $855. We said we would prefer to do it under different terms. We negotiated an option whereby we would do it with fixed payments instead of payments based on water sales, and we would do it for a 7-year period rather than having it, just depending on sales and that. So that's a quick summary where we are now. The board has two options. They can either approve the amendment, which would increase the amount of loan and change the terms to be paid as a fixed monthly payment, and also have the shorter term would be done over 7 years, or we can stay with the original terms for a lesser amount. So that's basically where we are right now. Are there any questions the board has? We can go into much more detail on any part that they
I
like.
have some questions. Kevin, I raised some questions last time, and I know you posed those same questions to the folks over at Montebello. One of my questions was, they're asking for a loan, they should be here just in case.
They are, yeah.
They are? They're
Yeah, Danilo Bastone, who's here.
Okay.
The assistant city manager.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah, if we can approach the...
Danilo, would you come up, please?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Is the project completed right now, or if it's not, at what percentage are we?
The project is at 92% completion.
Are there any change orders?
There were 3 change orders, or really only one during construction. The other ones were regarding the design and also the construction management. So
what is
only one, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
The one for construction is for about 3,100.
And the design work?
The design work, one was for 17. I believe it was 20,000, and then the other one for construction management was 14,000.
So these are change orders to the designer and the PMCM firm?
Correct.
We have these on the slide, actually.
Okay.
And just one important thing to point out, the 892 on the very bottom, that's just worst case scenario. All the change orders that are listed in yellow are still covered under the contingency, and I'll let you know.
Thanks.
So then, so the change order number 1 and 2 and 3, they have already been issued, right?
The only change order pending is the one, change order number 2, which is staff is, construction manager and engineering are still reviewing.
Okay, and the reason they're asking for that is what?
There was a change. Instead of going through the golf course, we decided to go around it, as far as go to Garfield and via San Clemente. So that increased the amount.
Okay. And the additional CMPM, roughly that's about 45% of the original cost estimate of $54,490. What constitutes that?
Well, the additional cost on the design was
The CMPM, I'm sorry.
the CMPM.
Yeah.
Is due to the large number of submittals and RFIs. We had a lot of questions from the contractor regarding certain items on the design. How was the
contract between you and the CMPM firm? Does it say anything in there that they can increase their fees if there are a certain number of RFIs that exceed the original scope?
No, it doesn't say it doesn't have an exact number of submittals or RFIs. It just states the number of hours, and based on the numbers of hours that they work on the.
Who's your CMPM firm?
Is Buckman and Associate.
Who?
Buckman and Associate.
Thank you. No, it took the city about 3 years to revive the project between 2014 and 2017. The project went dormant. Any particular reason?
There were other projects that the city was focused on, and then there were some issues with trying to get an agreement with the design firm, and And then after that, there was a lot of changes that needed to be done to the design work.
So during that period, the construction cost estimate went up from 455,000 to 659,000 and change, which is roughly about 45%. So the cost of construction went up in 2 or 3 years, and that's partly what you're asking the district to consider as an additional loan amount.
Correct.
Okay. Also, there was, the original bid was rejected based on the staff recommendation, and the project was re-advertised, but all of that process took about 5 months again.
Correct.
Why did it take that length of a time?
It was also, we had to reapply for the on-site retrofit grant with Metropolitan Water District. So we wanted to make sure we had that again approved before, because it is required that you have, before you start construction, you have the grant approval.
So the payment is going to be $10,893.60 on a monthly basis for 7 years. Where can I find that in your budget that has been allocated?
It's been allocated in the Golf Fund, and also it will be covered by the general fund.
So which one is going to pay for it?
It is a line item on the golf course, but it's most likely will be paid by the general fund, as the golf course currently is operating a little bit of loss.
Okay. So there is going to be a transfer from the general fund?
To the, yes.
To the golf fund to pay for this?
Yes.
And I can see that in your budget?
Yeah, you can see that, yeah, it's part of the transfers.
All right, thank you. Mr. Chair, I don't know if there are any other questions, but I got a substitute motion again. If there are any other questions.
Any other questions, anybody?
I do have a couple of questions. Yeah. How much water are we projected to sell as a result of this project?
250 acre feet roughly.
250 acre feet?
Yeah, the golf course uses a little more than that, but some of it is for the greens, and they are going to still be on the potable waters.
Okay, and that's annual?
Annual.
Excellent, okay. That's about the only question I have. I do have a comment about this. I think this is a very important project for both the city and for Central Basin. Central Basin has experienced a considerable loss of sales in imported water, and there has to be a very, in my opinion, aggressive effort to increase our water sales, and I think this is an opportunity for us to do it. So, thank you to the City of Montebello for your interest in this partnership, and thanks to the staff for working on this. I think this is very important.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Sure, this is, as the director mentioned, this is an important project. And it is going to hopefully be online when you're going to tap in actually to our recycled water?
It's projected right now, we're looking at mid-September.
Mid-September, that would be wonderful.
Yay.
And then the projected 250 acre a year, big part is 150, right? Oh,
250.
250 is, that's what's going to happen.
That's what projected uses, yeah.
Andrew, you were kind enough to go through the CAFR report of the City of Montebello and mention that there is a healthy reserve, right, for the general fund right now as it stands?
No, I just have one question.
Yes, that was actually in their last council agenda that was posted online, the June 30th general fund investments in cash investments balance was approximately $44 million.
So the question for the City of Montebello would be then, would you be able to absorb the difference of the original amount and what you're asking in addition now through your healthy $44 million reserves?
If the agreement or the amendment is not approved, yes, we would have to fund it.
Okay. Fair enough.
Kevin, Mr. Chair, I have a question. In this handout that we just received this morning, it shows contract amount in amendment number 1. It says that on the amendment number 1 that there's a fixed monthly payment, But it seems to me in the original contract, there's also a fix because they're going to buy a minimum. They're going to pay for a minimum of 150.
150.
So that's, to me, is fixed. So if they use no water, they're still going to pay on 150 acre feet of water.
Legally, we haven't got a determination on whether that is strictly for the 250 surcharge, which goes toward our loan payment, or to the full cost of water. We believe it's really going to be for the 250 surcharge. So the minimum payment under the existing contract would be 150 times the 250 markup.
Right. Okay.
Which is about 30-some odd thousand a year.
Mr. Chair, if I may, I'm going to have a substitute motion based on the information that we received today. Thank you for that, and thank you for your presence and being here today.
Okay, thanks.
My motion is, it's important for us to honor the agreements that we have reached 3 or 4 years ago. It serves a purpose. There's a cost increase in here. Obviously, the city has the ability to absorb the cost increase, the difference between what they're asking today and what we considered providing as a loan 3 or 4 years ago. So my suggestion is for us to stay with the numbers that we put forth 3 or 4 years ago, and then ask the city kindly to pay for the difference in the cost escalation. Essentially, that's what it is.
I second that. Roll call.
Director Chacon?
Would you repeat the motion?
Yes, the motion is to stay with the numbers that were put forth years ago and ask the city to pay for the difference.
Can we refer to the, yeah, I want to see those numbers.
Is that good? What we're basically doing is voting no on increasing on the amendment to the contract, so we stay with the original contract.
That's correct.
Okay.
Is it okay to proceed?
I'm sorry?
I wasn't sure if Director Vasquez had a comment.
Yeah, there's a motion, so go ahead.
Director Chacon?
I'm gonna have to abstain on this one, just because, this has been going on forever and ever. And, they say one thing and they do another, and right now it's probably a 2-2 over there anyway, so we don't know how this is gonna turn out. So I'm gonna abstain on this issue.
Director Gedney?
Just for clarification, are we voting on the original motion or the revised motion Director Oskouyi made? Just reread the current motion we're going to
This is for Director Oskouyi's substitute motion, which is to stay with the numbers, the original contract put forth years ago, and ask the city to pay for the difference.
I vote yes.
Director Grajeda?
Yes.
Director Hawkins?
No.
Director Oskouyi?
Yes.
Director Vasquez?
Okay, so just for clarification, so we're not going to approve what the staff is recommending, which is to amend the agreement to the new conditions that were set forth.
Correct.
But we have a commitment. These water cells are very, very important for us, in my opinion. I think we need to put every effort to make sure that these water cells go through. And the representative from the city of Whittier was here and has indicated that the city would be able to put in that amount, right? That would be required. So if that's going to move this project forward and the city has agreed to do that, then I will support this. Yes.
President Apodaca?
No.
No. So no on the substitute motion, or?
I'm sorry, the substitute motion is...
Substitute motion is to basically stay with the existing contract.
Yes.
Okay. Motion passes. Motion passes.
Yes.
Alrighty, good morning, directors. This is item number 15, authorization to express support for the Water Supply and Water Quality Act of 2018. This is also known as Proposition 3, and it will appear on the November 3rd general election ballot. Earlier this month at the Water Resources and Government Affairs Committee, the district staff and board committee had the opportunity to hear on this item. We also had the opportunity to meet with Dr. Jerry Merrill late last year to discuss the Water Supply and Water Quality Act of 2018. We had presented this item earlier in the year with the recommendation for support. Feedback from the committee was that staff perform additional research on local support for the measure. Dr. Merrill and the district have re-engaged in these conversations regarding Proposition 3. And this was, after this had taken place, voters passed Proposition 68, which was a $4 billion Parks and Water bond. And Proposition, as also to note, is Proposition 3 has also been endorsed by the Association of California Water Agencies and MWD, amongst others. What I would like to do before asking you for consideration on this item is spend a few minutes providing an overview of the measure.
You can go cross-eyed.
What we have here is a nearly $9 billion water bond initiative measure. As indicated, it will appear in the next couple of months on the statewide ballot. It's been supported by the Association of California Water Agencies and Metropolitan Water District. To provide some context, earlier this year in June, Proposition 68, the $4 billion Parks and Water Bond, was passed. This was the initiative that was actually authored by the legislature. Proposition 3, which is being led by Dr. Merrill, is a citizen initiative. Also, with regards to recent water bonds, we have Proposition 1, which was passed in June of 2014. Oh, thank you. With regards to Proposition 3, there's 6 broad funding categories, which I'll go over shortly. What I do want to distinct from past measures, though, is this is a direct appropriation to those funding agencies. So this isn't an appropriation to the legislature in which they're going to continuously appropriate. This means this funding is going to go directly to those specified agencies, amongst those the Department of Water Resources and State Water Resources Control Board, to manage the programs. And one of the desires of this initiative in what he shared with us, from what Dr. Merrill shared with us, is there's going to be the use of existing guidelines for programs so that there's not as long of a wait in terms of trying to get this funding out. Some details to consider is funds will be available to local governments, nonprofits, and private water companies. There will be a local match required of 50%, but there is some dedicated funding for those communities that qualify as disadvantaged. As indicated, about $1.4 billion directly available for disadvantaged communities, which would create that waiver of the local match, and $2.6 billion privatized for disadvantaged communities. And to give you some context, as defined, these are communities with an annual median household income less than 80% of the statewide annual median household income. The MHI in California in 2017 was $63,783, according to the U.S. Census Bureau. 80% of that would be $51,026. Nearly 50% of the communities within the Central Basin Service Area would qualify as disadvantaged communities. So what are those 6 key funding categories? There is groundwater management, which should be funded at $685 million, which just in a broad definition would be used for cleanup, recharge, and management of groundwater. Flood protection, which is funded at $500 million, and also a broad definition would be for the reduction of flood risk, including the expansion of floodplains and the repair of reservoirs. With regards to water supply, we see $2.53 billion, and that would be for the improvement, and also the increasing of water supply, drinking and wastewater treatment, water recycling, collection and cleanup of rainwater, and water conservation. With regards to watershed lands, we're talking about the protection and restoration and improvement in health of watershed lands and specified areas throughout the state to improve the quantity and quality of water. With regards to habitat, we're talking about improvements for fish and wildlife, including restoration of streams and wetlands to more natural conditions. And lastly, with regards to water facility upgrades, we're talking about repairs to existing dams, canals, and reservoirs. A little bit closer would be those, what qualifies as water supply funding. We see that there's $750 million dedicated to safe drinking water, about $400 million to recycling and $400 million to desalination, $365 million to conservation. Some of those items that would fall under conservation would be a statewide turf removal program and also a statewide toilet distribution program, amongst other programs. $550 million to deal with stormwater issues, about $5 million to the Integrated Regional Water Management Plan, and about $60 million to water measurement. And of interest to the district would be, well, how much of that funding is going towards disadvantaged communities? And that is the breakdown of the $1.4 billion that was discussed earlier with regards to how many is going to those communities that we've spoken about. $500 million to safe drinking water, wastewater for disadvantaged communities, $250 million, $440 million for stormwater, urban streams, $500 million. Locally, we see the Baldwin Hills Conservancy getting $30 million, the Los Angeles River, $150 million, and Conservation Corps at $40 million. One of the questions that comes up is, what does this mean overall with regards to bond indebtedness at the state level? What we're looking at is, if this measure were to be approved, it would include state cost of $17.3 billion to pay off principal of $8.9 billion and interest of $8.4 billion over a 40-year annual period. Annual payments would average about $433 million. And then just to give you some context, since 2000, voters have approved about $31 billion in general obligation bonds in statewide elections to pay for different types of water environmental projects. And one of the things that was shared with us by Dr. Merrill was, of the funding from Proposition 1 back in 2014, the expectation was the lion's share of that was going to be expended within the next year or so. And then just to give you some sense of where the bond is at in terms of polling, currently it is polling at 68%. And when we asked Dr. Merrill, was this something that needed 2/3 or 50 plus 1? He indicated that it needed 50 plus 1. And I believe that may conclude the presentation. Welcome some feedback and or questions, and the recommended motion is that the board authorize the general manager to express support for the Water Supply and Water Quality Act of 2018.
I move. Do I have a second?
I have a couple of questions.
Yes, sir.
First of all, where does this fit? I know a lot of these bonds, they're good, but can the state afford them? Because the state has a percentage of their gross budget that is to be in bonds. Is this within that limit or over the limit? Can we actually afford to do these bonds?
So, let's see. Let me go back one more. Can we go back one more, Al? So one of the things that did come up at committee was affordability, and we had asked Dr. Merrill to present on that. So what you see on your screen is the amount of bonds already sold, and then what have been authorized but unsold. And then what you see is bonds in November 2018, if that were to be passed, would be under 5%. And I believe the percentage given was you want to stay under that 6 to 7% in terms of affordability.
Yeah.
So hopefully that provides you some context in terms of...
That answers my question, because so many times we're over that and we're still approving bonds. And we're... The other thing is, who actually qualifies for this? Is it just the water people qualify for this? Do cities, do counties? Who qualifies for this particular bond?
Certainly. So the entities that would qualify for this would be local governments, including cities, nonprofit organizations, and those investor-owned utilities as well.
Okay, so by them qualifying and us qualifying, we can partner with somebody on
There would
some
be
of
those
this? So we can
opportunities,
work
yes.
other deals besides, once this bond is approved, we can work other deals with our purveyors and with our cities or counties or whoever then?
So there would be opportunities to partnership on projects as long as they fit within the parameters of those categories. The benefit would be is if a particular program benefited a disadvantaged community, you may be able to waive the local match, which would be of up to 50%.
Okay, that's all I had.
Alrighty.
Roll call.
Director Chacon?
Yes.
Director Gedney?
Yes.
Director Grajeda?
Yes.
Director Hawkins?
Yes.
Director Osculi?
Yes.
Director Vasquez?
Yes.
President Apodaca?
Yes.
Not going to move too far from you, directors. The legislative update. So, good morning once again. With respect to the legislative calendar, we're within the last week of the 2-year legislative session, so the legislature has until Friday to pass any bills. At that point, they would adjourn for the summer. At that point, any bills that have been handed over to the governor, he essentially has about a month to do one of three things: either sign, veto, or allow a bill to go into law without his signature. There are two items that we did want to keep you apprised of that we've been keeping a close eye on. Locally here, with regards to the Sativa County water issue, we are keeping an eye on this. We've not only we've been keeping an eye through attending LAFCO meetings to keep apprised. We've attended both the July and August board meeting. We're also keeping apprised of Assembly Bill 1577 by Assembly Member Mike Gibson. With regards to LAFCO, they've taken several actions since this issue has arisen. In particular, in July, they proceeded with a resolution of application for the commission to initiate a dissolution of the Sativa County Water District. They authorized their executive officer to draft a letter to the state board recommending that the LA County Department of Public Works temporarily manage Sativa as an administrator or receiver, and urge the state board to provide funding as necessary, and that'll come into play when I talk about the legislation. They directed their executive officer to draft a letter to the LA County District Attorney regarding potential Brown Act violations, and the reason they directed their executive officer to do that is because there was testimony by members of the community that had alluded to such allegations. They also sent a letter to the California Public Utilities requesting that they delegate a point person to assist LAFCO in identifying an appropriate long-term solution. With regards to Assembly Bill 1577, this would authorize the state board to order Sativa to accept managerial and administrative services without first making a finding that consolidation or extension of services is not appropriate or technically or economically feasible if the state board finds that an emergency circumstance exists to warrant immediate action. Recent amendments to that bill include providing $200,000 from the general fund towards this issue. So if there's an entity that's chosen to serve as a caretaker, they would be provided that funding to assist with that. Also limiting the liability from the entity that may take over Sativa. With regards to legislative support, this is a bill that has received unanimous support in the legislature. I have not seen anything in terms of folks that are in opposition to this, and as of now, it is on the Senate floor. Another issue that we have been keeping apprised of that we thought was going to lay over until the next year, but came back as part of the discussions with regards during the last month, the legislative session, is Senate Bill 845. Earlier this year, the board took an oppose unless amended position on Senate Bill 623 by Bill Monning, which would have instituted a per meter charge throughout the state to create the Safe Drinking Water Fund. The fund would have provided support for those communities that continue to lack access to clean drinking water. The issue itself has been revived over the last few weeks in the legislature as Senate Bill 845 with some amendments. It would require community water systems with more than 200 service connections to provide an opportunity for each connection within their system to provide a voluntary remittance as part of their regular bill. The range in those remittances would go from $1 to $10 or another amount to be determined by the individual should they choose to make that voluntary contribution. It would require them to transfer the money to the state board at least twice a year for this fund. Another amendment was that it would allow the community water system to retain an amount for reimbursement for reasonable costs associated with the collection of this fee. It would allow for the reimbursement to not exceed 4% of those fees until July 1st, 2021, and not exceed 2% thereafter. We did express our concerns with our legislative delegation on this bill as it's moving through the legislature. And then also we've communicated to our retail water issues that the issue has been revived. And the current status of the bill is it is in the Assembly Committee on Appropriations. And as those of us may be around, we've been witness that a lot of stuff can occur within the last week of session. So we're going to be keeping an eye on this and keeping in contact with our delegation. So I'd like to thank the board for the time to provide the legislative update. Welcome any feedback or questions. Thank you, directors.
Item 17, update on the Montebello Recycled Water Pipeline to supply the Montebello Hills development.
Good morning, directors. This information item is to present the proposed and currently under discussion Montebello Hills Recycled Water Expansion Pipeline Project. The site is, as you can see from the slide, the site is located in the city of Montebello, and the local purveyor is San Gabriel Valley Water Company. The pipeline will connect at the intersection of Lincoln Avenue and head north within Montebello Boulevard for approximately 7,400 linear feet to the project area. The green line section and the preliminary location and sizing of a temporary and permanent pump station noted in yellow have already been designed by Westios at the developer's expense. The next design phase will be from Jefferson Boulevard to Paramount Boulevard and would include a permanent pump station. The pump station will be located at the intersection of Jefferson Boulevard and Montebello Boulevard. It has been decided to stop at the Montebello Hill site, which reduces the pipeline size. District staff met with Toll Brothers, who's in charge of developing the Montebello Hill site. They have expressed their interest in partnering with the district in order to build a recycled water pipeline and pump station for this project. They directed Westios, who is their own contracted design firm. Excuse me?
Excuse me. This issue is catching me off guard because I'm trying to understand. Now, this is a project to extend our recycled water line?
Correct.
Has there been a feasibility study regarding how this would impact our existing system now?
Yes, there was back when we first started on this project years ago when it was Cook Properties.
How years ago? Before my time?
No, 2014, June 2014. It was
before my time.
Before your time on the board, before my time.
So I've heard comments about the existing system needing a reservoir and issues with hydraulics and all this stuff. A lot of things went on when the Southwest project was begun, and we're going off of an old feasibility study in 2014?
No, Director, we're redoing that. Again, this is a conceptual study update. The project has changed in that originally when the concept done, they were taking it up to supply the cemetery and supply a shopping center. Demand would have been 800 to 1,000 acre feet, and they had higher demands projected in the development. It's cut down now where the total demand is about 200 acre feet, first for dust control, and that would transition to irrigation. So it's a totally different project. We've asked them to do because their consultant did the design, redesign and give us a cost estimate. And that's all we're doing now. We're looking at the cost estimate, and then we'll come to the board and we'll tell you whether it makes sense from a staff basis and whether the board decides to invest money in it.
So we're not putting the cart before the horse on this. This project has been fully vetted by the board for consideration.
No, this is the beginning of the project. The old project was fully vetted and then the project stopped. This is, to me, almost a new project. It's a new concept, much smaller in scale, so we've got to
And
start
there's been
back.
no promises made to the contractor,
No, made to the
developer?
developer, et cetera. They did, again, they did the initial design at their cost of the thing, and that's fine. So right now, I talked to them actually last week, and they have revised the costs, and they're going to get us a report this week on what the revised costs are, and we'll take it through engineering committee like we normally do. So this is just an update.
An assessment going to be done on whether the system can handle this?
Yes, but under that tech memo, they did a hydraulic analysis based on the current demand that we have and pretty much the head that we will need. That's the reason why they came up with the preliminary design for the pump station.
Will they need a reservoir?
No.
And we've gotten confirmation from the sanitation district they can handle this?
What we have from the sanitation district is that they creatively have come up with 0.75 acre feet on the Los Coyotes side, which is 0.75 MGD, which is about 840 acre feet on the Los Coyotes side, which we can do. We're in the middle of actually doing it right now. We proved it out by tweaking down the pressure valve connecting the two systems. So yes, we have water for this if we decide it was what was needed. But this is a year away. If the board approved it, when they do the study, it looks like a good project. They still have a year for design and construction before they even get to the grading part of it. So we're a year away from any, and hopefully by that time they'll have finished their mitigated negative direct and adaptive management plan.
Roman, I'm sorry, if I may ask a quick question. Going to your graphics in here, the red lines are going to be the future water lines that are going to be feeding the project, right?
The red, pretty much the red will be something that the current purveyor would take ownership of. And it's pretty much what...
And it doesn't matter if it's recycled, if they go recycled, or if it's going to be portable. They have to put in these pipelines anyways.
No, there is
They don't?
within their study and within what they have done, there is their own potable water distribution system that they have already designed for the future homes that they'll have.
Not designed, in. So they have to,
This is still an undeveloped land.
Right, so they have to bring in.
They have to bring in, and so if they don't get recycled water, they'll serve it with potable water.
Is there infrastructure to feed them potable water? That's my next question.
Not at this time.
Not at this time.
But again, what I heard again last week talking to the project manager, he said that they're looking at that option also, because obviously when we shrunk down the amount, originally it looked like a good partnership because we were going to be going up to serve the cemeteries and the shopping center, and it would have added another 400 acre feet.
Right.
But now it doesn't look as good for us, so.
No, I'm sorry, my question was not the red infrastructure, the blue one. The blue one, it has to be provided to them so
that's all ours,
That's all ours. We have to extend in order to be able to do that. My question is, if we were not to do that, how would they get their potable water from? Is there a point of connection for potable water existing? Does the city have a system to provide them with the potable water demands that they need?
The purveyor there is Santa Clara Valley Water.
I'm sorry, yes.
And they have a plant. I don't know where it's coming from. I haven't looked at it because it's not.
So my point is, when Toll Brothers comes in and asks for, and I know we have told them we don't have any money, but if they say, hey, can you partner with us? Can go back to them and say, look, you have to put in some investment to bring in either or.
Correct.
So why are you asking me for money? I guess that's where I'm going.
No, and they came in right off the bat, paid for the designs because they wanted to know what the cost was, and have offered a partnership going forward at 50-50. Those are an art, not a science with the board here. We've told them, given our financial situation, it depends on grants. The advantage to them might be the retrofit money. There are all sorts of things out there if we get into financial analysis. But with the reduced demands, I don't think it's going to pencil out for us. But right now, we're just looking at it, and all we're trying to do is keep the board informed.
Right. Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
And that pretty much summarizes the whole thing. I'm not sure if you guys have any questions. But as far as funding, the design is being funded by Toll Brothers, and everything else is currently under discussions.
How much in potential water sales?
It's about 200. Temporary for irrigation and dust control, it's about 180. But then as
Annually?
Yeah, acre feet annually. However, once the permanent irrigation will come in, it would be around 184 permanently.
184?
194 acre feet.
194.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. Item 18, Moody credit rating.
So this is the last information item. So we recently received word from Moody's, one of the two credit rating agencies, that they downgraded us 3 notches, equivalent from A+ to BBB+. Their actual rating is Baa1, but I even have a hard time with figuring out what the Moody's ratings are, so I'm giving you the equivalent ones. So there were 2 significant drivers that they mentioned, and this presentation, by the way, was given to the Finance Committee earlier this month. As the board is aware, not meeting the 115% DCR and lower reserves, and you can see their quotes there that they've mentioned in their press release. So along those lines of investments and reserves, we wanted to show a little trend over the last 4 fiscal years. You can see there's peaks and valleys each year, especially when the revenue from the county comes in, our standby charge. However, you can see overall the trend is that reserves are going lower. So a little history on Standard & Poor's, that's the other rating agency. They gave their report about 14 months ago and downgraded us to A-. We have not heard from them. The rumor is that the analyst in charge of our rating there is on maternity leave, so we're not going to bother her during this time. However, this is the Moody's, again, this is the equivalent rating. You can see the drop from 2017 to 2018, those 3 notches. So just a little bit about what's the big picture. So you can see in this chart, in like 2013 and 2014, we were in the superior level. Right around 2013 and 14, again, there's 2 different rating agencies and they have to sometimes sync up. We were downgraded as the credit quality into the good level. Now in the last year, S&P on the right column is at A-, so it's very close to the adequate credit quality. And now we've gone to that Baa1 for Moody's, which is the, so we're straddling the line between good and adequate. So the staff brought to the board some proactive items. You're very well aware of this. Just as a rehash, creation of the lockbox account. We did the defeasance in June for August debt service, all of 2018, and we're able to only renew the letter of credit for that 6 months to early 2018. So what's the district's response? I think, as we've said on this slide, is the continued budgetary discipline each and every fiscal year, but especially the current one, and potential adoption of more fixed revenue in nature compared to variable in the future. So The immediate impact, this is where the presentation went a little longer. We received, compared to the Finance Committee, we received some information from U.S. Bank, our letter of credit provider. That's the one that just wanted to renew for 6 months. And as part of the contract, if we received a downgrade to the level that we're at, they would have the ability to increase the fee that they charge us. It's called the LOC facility fee, letter of credit facility fee, by 1%. So they have indeed informed us of this. It was buried in the middle of a letter that they just recently sent us. So I wanted to give the board an update. Staff wanted to provide this update to that facility fee. Before we made that renewal in early June, the existing rate was 1.71%. That was the rate as of May 31st. With the renewal, they increased the rate 25 basis points. So at the end of the fiscal year, June 30th, that rate was at 1.96. And then in the middle of July is the effective date of that rating downgrade by Moody's, and U.S. Bank informed us they will be using that date in mid-July and increasing the rate by a full percentage point to 2.96. So that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions, anyone? Thank you. Item 19, which is a closed session. Counselor?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, one item for closed session today, conference with legal counsel regarding anticipated litigation pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9 D2, one case. Closed session note, the Brown Act prohibits the disclosure of confidential information acquired in a closed session by any person present and offers various remedies to address willful breaches of confidentiality. These include injunctive relief, disciplinary action against an employee, and referral of a member of the legislative body to the grand jury. It is incumbent upon all those attending lawful closed sessions to protect the confidentiality of those discussions. Only the legislative body, acting as a body, may agree to divulge confidential closed session information. Regarding attorney-client privilege communications, the entire body is the holder of the privilege, and only a majority vote of the entire body can authorize the waiver of the privilege. We're now ready for closed session.
Mr. Chairman, I will not be participating in closed session. However, I will be here to answer any questions that any directors might have about the issue that's being discussed. Thank you.
Session, general conference with legal counsel regarding anticipated litigation pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9, subsection D2, one case. The board discussed this item, and there is no reportable action.
General manager report on district.
One other, so that the general counsel's report, there was one report made to the ethics hotline since our last board meeting on July 23rd, 2018. The district's ethics officer, Nixon Peabody, took a look at that matter, determined that the allegations that were made in the anonymous hotline did not rise to the level of a violation. The board chairman was notified of that finding and counseled the individual that was the subject of that allegation. And that concludes that report. That's it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
General manager's report.
Just that the district will be closed on Monday, September 6th for Labor Day. Other than that, nothing.
And director's report on meeting and conferences. Gentlemen, anybody? No?
I do have a comment. Yes. I do want to, the premium is due for J. Prima in April. I do want to start discussing our options for another insurance company. As I said, when we had to approve the last one, I do not like the language in the current premium, so I want to make sure we have plenty of time to discuss carriers, and I have no problem, J. Prima is doing a good job, but I need that language that we talked about in the past taken out, and a commitment that will not change 6 months before the premium's due. So in other words, if the premium is due in April, 6 months prior to that, they can't make any changes to that language.
And we've asked J. Prima about removing the language, and they're going to get back to us, but they also reminded us we have a 3-year contract.
I want enough time that if we have to drop them, then we drop them. We can't be waiting until the last minute because we have no backs against the wall. Yeah. So that's all I have.
Director Hawkins? Yes, I just wanted to report that I did go to the Urban Water Institute in San Diego, and I enjoyed it. And actually, I got some pretty good ideas. I talked to Kevin about them. Hopefully, we can bring some of those forward. Thank you. Thanks, Scott.
Nope, not today. I just want to thank everybody for their input, and I just want to let everybody know, you guys are all doing a great job, and may you guys all have a blessed day.
Director Vasquez?
Yes, I'm interested in talking to our general counsel after the meeting regarding the request that I submitted. The response from the board. Thank you.
I have no comments. Sorry. Meeting's adjourned.